Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to our friends on the West Coast. Welcome to today's webinar on hiring for quality, consistency, and culture. Industry leaders share their secrets. Brought to you today by Outmatch, leaders in transforming the world of work. Before we move on, I just want to quickly say it's a very exciting time here at Outmatch. We recently launched the Outmatch platform and our brand new website. So when you have a chance, head on over to the website and check out all the new resources, sign up for a future webinar, and get the full scoop on the Outmatch platform at www.outmatch.com. My name is Charles Summers. It's my pleasure to be serving as your moderator during this hour. If you want to get in touch with me about future topics, Outmatch-specific information, or general webinar inquiries, feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/SummersCharles or email at csummers@outmatch.com. Let's go ahead and quick go through some housekeeping. At this time, please take a moment to join Outmatch on Twitter at OutmatchHCM and tweet questions, thoughts, or quotes as you're listening by using the hashtag OutmatchInsights. The feature presentation will take approximately 45 minutes, and following that, we'll have some time set aside for a Q&A session with our presenters. If you'd like a copy of today's slides and the recording, they will be posted on our webinar page tomorrow at www.outmatch.com/webinars, or the slides have also been attached to this presentation. If you look at your GoToWebinar status window, you'll see a questions queue, so you can interact with us during the presentation by asking questions, making comments, or sharing best practices at any point during the webcast. We will answer any questions at the end of the webcast during the Q&A session. Again, you can also tweet your questions and comments to @OutmatchHCM with the hashtag OutmatchInsights. I'm joined today by Nikki Cunningham and Kellyanne McGrath. Nikki has a background in IO psychology and works with clients to find the most impactful solutions to support their talent selection and employee development needs. She helps organizations to identify top talent across their jobs and then maximize their talent potential through targeted development solutions. Kellyanne is a value advocate who focuses on nurturing and maintaining partnerships with our clients. She provides strategic guidance and support to ensure clients are seeing results and getting the most out of their partnership with us. With that said, I'd like to welcome you both.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you so much, Charles. I appreciate it. Just as Charles mentioned, we have a few folks who are actually joining our call today that come from two of my clients, which I'm excited to present to you. So we have folks that are going to represent both CarMax and Dollar General. I think you'll find a lot of what they have to share with you pretty insightful and from two different types of perspectives. So Caitlin Wilbur is actually from CarMax, one of our enterprise clients. CarMax is in growth mode today, and for those of you who don't actually know who they are, just a short background, CarMax has about 175 locations currently and growing. So a big focus of theirs is really growing their business, but obviously that means too looking at employees and growing their employee space. Caitlin's been pretty instrumental in our partnership and really owns a lot of the selection strategy as well as execution. So I'll introduce you to Caitlin. Caitlin, is there anything more you want to probably add to my introduction?
No, thank you so much for that introduction, Kellyanne, and I'm really happy to share whatever I've learned with CarMax and working with Outmatch today.
Fantastic, fantastic. And then we're also lucky to have two pretty valuable folks over at the Dollar General side. So Leslie Allen and Kimberly Huffman. Leslie specifically has a really strong focus and footprint in the talent acquisition space at Dollar General. She manages a whole team of recruiters, owns the selection strategy and overall process for both the field as well as some other divisions of the organization. Leslie, I think she's been there for a number of years, but Leslie, I'll turn over to you if there's anything more you want to add about your background.
Yeah, so been with the company for 5 years, spent most of it here at Dollar General on the field HR side, so supporting the store side, which is a predominant focus for me in this role, is really store manager level staffing and hourly staffing, as well as just ensuring our district manager and regional director positions have a voice in the communities as well. but I think the introduction you gave covered most everything else, so thank you.
Perfect, perfect. And then Kimberly is another one of my kind of day-to-day contacts too. A little slightly different from Leslie. She actually brings a lot of the organizational development piece. So Kimberly actually owns the assessment strategy and partners pretty closely with Leslie in executing that selection strategy and assessment strategy within selection throughout the field organization. Kimberly's also been there for a number of years too, but Kimberly, I'll pass it over to you if you have anything more to add.
Sure, thanks, Kellyanne. Yes, I've been with the company a little over 5 years. I started in the field as a generalist, and then the last couple of years I've been here at the corporate office focusing on organizational development. I do many other things like with engagement, performance, succession, and development, but also own our recruiting system and pre-hire assessments, and work really closely with Leslie on what we can do to enhance our candidate experience and sourcing, et cetera, for the company.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I mentioned kind of a background on CarMax. For those folks who, you really all should probably be familiar with the Dollar General brand, but just to give you a little background on them, Dollar General has about 14,000 plus locations today currently and growing as well. So they have, obviously, similar to CarMax, very high volume for different positions across their organizations, and both are focused in high volume hiring and growth mode. So as we kind of talk through the different topics and ask a couple questions of our panelists today, we'll touch on kind of their unique strategies and execution around this high volume hiring and how they can really overcome any challenges to make sure they're increasing quality candidates through the selection process. So with that being said, I'll turn it back over to Nikki.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kellyanne, and thank you, Kim, Leslie, and Caitlin, for those introductions. We are very lucky and feel honored to have you guys joining us today to share some of your best practices. And so now that we've done some introductions on our end, we do want to make this as interactive as possible, and so we would like to hear from you guys that are on the line. And so if you don't mind, we're going to have you use some of the webinar, the GoToWebinar tools, and if you wouldn't mind chatting in the industry that you're in, we would appreciate that. And then after that, we'll go ahead and open up a poll and have you respond through the poll feature and let us know what are your greatest struggles related to high volume hiring. So you can go ahead and select the option. If there's anything that you would like to add that you would really hope that we hit on through the panel discussion today, feel free to also chat that in. And this will really help us target the conversation so that you all get the most from this. So we'll go ahead and give you guys a couple minutes to do that.
Yep, so it looks like we're starting to get some answers in here. We've got, looks like the majority are saying sourcing / attracting talent, and number 2 is identifying candidate fit. We'll continue this for another 30 seconds to a minute to see what kind of outcomes we get here.
Wonderful, thank you, Charles. All right. And then did we get responses regarding the industry in as well?
Looks like some restaurants, retail, technology, looks like agriculture. There's a couple of different ones on there.
Great, wonderful. So great, it looks like we have some diversity within the group today, so really looking forward, like I said, in making this as interactive as possible. And so before I pass it back over to Kellyanne, we'll certainly touch on the agenda, and then we'll leave time at the end for questions, but feel free to chat in your questions along the way, so we're capturing those and we allow enough time to get to those questions at the end. So with that, in terms of the agenda, our goals today are really for you to walk away with some tangible strategies and techniques that you can apply, especially within that high volume hiring setting. And so, of course, we will touch on some of those sourcing strategies. So how do you as a company keep your pipeline full? And most importantly, how do you keep that pipeline full of qualified candidates? So one of the consistent challenges that we hear is that in this marketplace, there is a lot of competition. So when it comes to high volume hiring, the candidate experience is incredibly important, and really being able to differentiate your brand is important. So we'll definitely talk about some of the ways that both Dollar General as well as CarMax have been able to do that. And then absolutely identifying the right fit. So we know that in a high volume setting, you get a ton of candidates. And from a recruiter standpoint, it can be incredibly overwhelming to work through that candidate pool. And so we'll definitely touch on some of the tools and techniques that both of our clients have in place, as well as some other best practices to really make sure the selection process is both efficient from the recruiter standpoint, as well as that candidate experience. And so with that, again, feel free to chat in questions along the way, but I'm going to pass it back over to Kellyanne to begin the conversation.
Fantastic. So I'm sure you guys are all ready to get started and hear from kind of our fabulous clients that are about to share some insightful information. Well, we thought we would kick it off in speaking with Caitlin, Kim, as well as Leslie, is have them kind of talk through some of their sourcing strategies. So as you think about in the recruiting world today, it's a combination of not only sourcing and posting jobs today, but it's more a candidate-driven market where there's a lot of passing recruiting going on for all levels, beginning at the hourly on up. So I'd love to hear maybe from Caitlin, if you don't mind kind of kicking it off and sharing with us some of the exciting stuff that CarMax is doing today around your sourcing strategy and what type of tools you're actually leveraging as you move into the end of this year and beginning of next year for your growth.
Absolutely. So one thing that we have had to start doing, as I'm sure a lot of you on the call have, is start sourcing at lower and lower levels. So we are working on a team of recruiters who are focused on our store sales consultant roles. Obviously, selling cars in a retail environment, our sales consultants are some of our most important associates, and we've put a lot of talent selection time and resources there. So we have a team at our corporate office that are now dedicated to sourcing folks in trickier markets for us, and they're going through kind of more traditional channels, LinkedIn, and also identifying retailers in markets that may be closing down locations, things like that, getting a hold of those folks. And in that sourcing process, we use our assessment tools to and specifically SalesMax for our sales consultants that take that pool of people that we've identified and lets us know, is this really a high quality candidate at this point? Should we move them on to the in-store experience or should we keep our search going? So we keep things really broad. We don't necessarily look for a sales background, but just kind of high energy roles ranging from real estate, teaching, anything like that, and seeing who might be interested in making a career shift.
Fantastic. So you guys know CarMax does a really good job of kind of thinking outside the box from a recruiting perspective. So leveraging a lot of the diverse backgrounds, their candidates who are now employees, and kind of seeing that they all come from different walks of life, different backgrounds, and using that as they kind of search for other folks that could be a good fit throughout the organization. I think Dollar General, in the same token, too, there's a lot of uniqueness that they have that they bring to the table in terms of the sources that they use. Similar to CarMax in some ways, but also different in the sense of who they're hiring and how they're actually attracting those folks. Leslie or Kim, do you mind talking through a little bit of how you leverage your internal associates, especially to kind of provide, you know, more appealing and sexy kind of image to your candidates?
Okay, so yeah, I will. This is Leslie. And I will say a little bit from what Caitlin shared with CarMax. We have to use some of our online resources similar to them, your typical Career Builder, Indeed, Monster, LinkedIn resources. One of our biggest things with Dollar General, we really believe that our customers are our employees. So when we talk about the internal piece, when you walk into our stores, when the thing that we preach to our store employees on a regular basis is they've got to talk to our customers as if they could be a coworker, a peer of theirs, at any given point in time. So they're really a big recruiting strategy for us. Our stores have to look like they're always advertising. They have to be able to speak to our career website, being able to direct potential candidates and customers to our career site, help pushing the message out to their friends and family about different opportunities that we have, while also talking about just our overall story with who we are from a growth perspective too, and then the type of opportunities that we can provide to our employees.
Awesome.
And on top of, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, if you too could add, Leslie, I know on top of all that, you've actually seen some success in increasing your pipeline over this past year as well.
Yes, we have. We've had pretty big success with increasing our candidate flow through a lot of resources and really pushing hard in the communities that we support and sharing our message. We typically don't have a difficult time with candidate flow. It's more about taking the candidates that we have and figuring out the right candidate, the right person for the position, which comes more into play than the sourcing piece. I think another benefit to that, so you shared earlier, Kellyanne, that I have a team of recruiters for me, so I have around 20 recruiters that split the country and handle store manager staffing. Each of them have a budget as well where they do localized marketing. So we're reaching out to the community centers. We're reaching out in some of our areas, honestly getting the mayor on the phone and talking about where does your town go hang out on Friday night? Like, where can we go? Where can we put print ads in front of people and share a little bit about who our story is?
I'll add to that from the technical side. So how we support through our recruiting system, as Leslie's doing, is a lot of the data analytics. So what are the sources where we're getting most of our candidates from? So that way we can be strategic about where we place our marketing dollars in the right place. Leslie also mentioned that we're always hiring. So we have evergreen recs for every store all the time. So even if that position is filled, we can still get candidates in that pool for our store managers. And then even just looking at utilizing integrations with our systems and other partnerships through, whether it's a diversity partnership or other organizations like Indeed and the CareerBuilder, to scrape our positions and then post them locally if they have a local chapter or things like that, if I think of our diversity networks and how to get our jobs out there.
That's fantastic. Kim, do you know, and I don't mean to put you in the hot seat, but when you look at kind of the past year, what is really your number one source that you're kind of finding the most candidates coming from today?
Honestly, it's about more than half of them are coming organically, which is exciting for us to hear. So what we're learning as we're getting smarter with our big data is the localized markets where we're targeting maybe tougher areas is where we need to get more thoughtful about where we're getting those candidates at, and it's really depending on the local market, and we help our recruiters help us determine what that is, but majority is coming organically just through normal advertising.
Yeah, I think the other thing on that is we can't have a one-step approach to recruiting and where to advertise. So maybe a majority, when we look at external sites, maybe a majority are coming through CareerBuilder, but when you look at where our stores are, a majority of our stores are in CareerBuilder markets. So we know, and through our source coding and being able to tell candidate flow, that in particular markets, particular locations, CareerBuilder works best, Monster works best, Indeed is working best. So we have different platforms for different areas, if it's a metro or rural, or if we're in the Northeast versus in California. We aren't using a one-step approach for all of our positions and all of our stores. We're having to do it based on the market that they're in.
That's great. That's great. So it's much more targeted and localized, like you were talking about earlier. So as we kind of think through in the examples that both Caitlin, Kimberly, and Leslie have given us, I think at the core of all this too is really your brands, right? Because wherever you're recruiting from in terms of sources, it really has to kind of relate back to your own brand and how you're leveraging your brand from a recognition or loyalty standpoint to attract not just candidates and have a strong candidate flow, but also top talent, right? That you can retain and grow throughout your organizations. Because I also know, just knowing both of your organizations, you have a strong kind of promotability from within once you get someone in the door. So I was hoping that maybe we could kind of also chat just a little bit about how you differentiate your brands. And Caitlin, I hate to put you back on the hot seat too, but I know just knowing with working with CarMax, there's a certain uniqueness around kind of how you present CarMax to the world, so to speak, and attract those candidates when you look at your brand and your culture. I'm hoping you might be able to share some examples around that with the group.
Certainly. So CarMax from the beginning was founded on integrity in car sales, particularly in used car sales. It's hard to come by. So we were the first, now not the only, who really embraced the no haggle car buying experience, and wanted to create, as part of that, a really fun and welcoming environment for customers, where they didn't feel intimidated to come in and buy a car, and create that same environment for our associates as well. So we've continued that since we opened our first store in 1993, and how we've kind of continued to keep that real is one of our major sources of candidates are referrals. Because we have a kind of family-oriented environment, a fun environment, people talk about working at CarMax with their friends and their family, and they get those folks to apply. So that is something that we've been able to kind of continue very organically as we've grown from our first store to now over 180 stores.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I appreciate you kind of adding that just kind of more context around your brand and how you put it front and center. I know Dollar General on that side too, you obviously have enough stores to kind of get the word out there. People know who Dollar General is, but if you could talk just a little bit more to the group around kind of how you hook them, right, in terms of a candidate once they've applied, and really how do you speak to the brand and hook them in so it helps differentiate you as another retailer in your space.
This is Kim. I'll let Leslie talk specifically about the process, but one of the exciting things about Dollar General that you may know or not know, Leslie mentioned earlier, we have 14,000 stores. We've been opening up 1,000 stores a year, adding in a distribution center a year. So when you think about the retail segment and how a lot of stores have been closing, we go in the opposite way. We have a really exciting story right now with our growth potential.
Yep, and then we also organizationally really push our internal promote lifestyle. And so from our store manager population, right now we've got 50% of our store managers hired this year were ASMs previously. So this is their first store manager role. So that rolls up throughout the entire organization. I think Kim and I can speak personally about being put in roles in this organization that we didn't have experience with, and we're an organization that really is really fully believes in giving people the opportunity to learn and roll. And so we get to talk about that a lot with candidates as well on, this is what our lifestyle looks like, and maybe you come in at this position, but if X is where you want to wind up, we have a place for you. We can work on development plans. Something our OD organization at Kim's side really pushes a lot is the development piece. So how do we help people get from point A to point B if that's really where they want to go? And I think our growth story it has to be what helps us. We're discount retail, and when I say that, we're discount retail through and through. We don't pay great. We pay fair for the market. We don't have any substantial salaries to offer people, and a lot of negotiating when we're talking about positions. What people join this organization for is their growth, is the fact that we're opening 900 stores, 1,200 this year, 900 next year, new stores, distribution centers, positions at corporate, and we're giving people opportunities to grow their careers.
And our culture of serving others, right? So it's about them developing themselves and having a career they can grow with. And then to what Leslie mentioned earlier about, a lot of our employees are our customers. And so with the foundation of Dollar General is about serving others and having 14,000 locations. We're big, but also very localized, right? So in your community, if you have a Dollar General where you live, a lot of people know that that's my Dollar General, or the store by the store manager that's in there and by their name. So people really love that community feel and that aspect that they're helping out their community and they're growing their career.
That's awesome. So I think both companies, you guys at Dollar General and CarMax, kind of do similar approaches in terms of kind of outreach and using that outreach, I wouldn't say as leverage, but outreach to also get you kind of differentiating or different types of candidates, as we were talking about earlier. Caitlin, do you mind just maybe adding a little bit more detail too around kind of one of CarMax's recruitment strategies in terms of military recruiting and kind of how you've made that part of your kind of brand differentiation?
Absolutely. That's something that CarMax has felt strongly about for a long time and have recently had an opportunity to really expand our reach and our programming there. A couple of years ago, our team made it a goal to achieve over 10% of our hires being current, former military, or military spouses. And we have achieved that goal, and we're around 12% of our hiring fit that category. Basically what we've done is reach out to bases and installations around the country, particularly having a lot of success with automotive technicians, folks who have been working on military vehicles and moving them over to our shop. We've created a military translation tool for our hiring managers to understand the language of folks coming out of the military, what their experiences were, and how that might align to what our hiring managers are more used to hearing. So basically bridging that gap between the military and civilian life. Our folks who come in from the armed forces say that the environment feels in some way very much the same. There's a camaraderie, pulling for a goal. Particularly in our shop, there's lots of daily goals, daily tasks to be completed. So we've had a lot of success kind of, once again, making the transition a little bit easier for those folks. We've also had a great opportunity to partner through our CarMax Foundation with an organization called Kaboom, and they build playgrounds throughout the country. And recently we've kind of shifted our focus with them to not only underserved communities, but also military communities as well. So trying to reach those important families, those important people all throughout the country in different ways. So sharing the message about CarMax and our opportunities, tying it to their service, and also making sure that their families are supported as well.
That's fantastic. As you guys on the call can probably tell, both CarMax, Dollar General, and a couple other clients I help support throughout Match 2 really do their best in trying to connect their culture through the different strategies they do, whether it's telling the story at Dollar General of kind of a successful associate and using that to kind of build into their recruitment strategies locally, or CarMax kind of using their culture of maybe giving back and also kind of hands-on as they look at other recruiting strategies for military or other diverse groups. Really appreciate kind of the context you folks gave too. If we kind of move forward too, I think one of the other topics we wanted to start to touch on too was more around the idea of really your candidate experience. So this is kind of like a hot topic that has been a hot topic when you think of talent acquisition and selection over the last number of years. But it's really becoming more and more clear, I'm sure to you folks on the call, of how important and key it is to not only find the candidates and fill the top of your funnel, but also make sure that those candidates stay engaged throughout the process. So you've identified them, but you want to keep them happy, right? And I know Dollar General, you've spoken a lot about really making your customer number one and knowing that some of your candidates can be customers. So I thought it would be great if you could share with the group just around some of the tools or strategies you've actually put in place to help kind of increase your engagement and experience with candidates through the selection process.
So I could go ahead and start with that. This is one of the most exciting things for me, and I found interesting at the beginning of this webinar how most were really focused on the 76% looking at sourcing and attracting and talent, which what we found really goes back to the candidate experience, because if a candidate goes, we can get them to our website, but if they don't have a good experience, they won't complete the application. And so our shift has really focused to include that candidate experience. And what we've seen, so we've changed our recruiting system in the last year. We've been with iSIMS for over a year now. And what that has done is significantly decrease our application time, the seat time to complete the application. And our mantra is to get to one-click hiring, one-click application. So we're trying to reduce as many clicks as possible because we want that candidate in our pipeline first. What we've already seen over the course of the year is that our candidates, more than half of them are applying via a mobile phone, and that's an increase of 40% over the last year. So seeing a significant impact that way. Also, what we look at is from our pre-hire assessments, and obviously we use Outmatch. So we're always looking at, again, is the assessment relevant to what we need for the position? So we're finding that right fit, and then doing the data analytics and the ROI studies and impact studies to say what value are we getting out of it, and what can we do to help ensure that the candidate has a good experience as well. So we're getting information from the back end and the front end. And so looking at things like piloting picture assessments, et cetera, and at what population is that best to fit with to ensure we're getting that start to finish happy candidate experience.
And this is Leslie. I'll elaborate a little bit. Kim talked about the importance of the candidate experience on being able to attract talent, and I think for our population, and Kellyanne, you talked about it at the very beginning of the call, we're not the only people hiring. And to differentiate yourself from the others that are hiring, that has to be important. If your application process takes 45 minutes and a local competitor of yours takes 25, then they're getting the applicants. They're the ones that those applicants are talking to other friends and family members of theirs saying, oh my gosh, just go apply to company X. They have a really short application assessment process. And so it's really, you've got to make sure that you have an experience on the front end from making sure your career site is easy to click through, to getting to an application. If you have an assessment, that it's very clear that you have an assessment, how long it's going to take. And then one of the other things that we've committed to with the organization is we're going to level set interview expectations with the candidates. So we have an expectation, our recruiters do initial interviews. The second interview is with the district manager, the hiring manager. That time frame has to be less than 48 hours. And if that means your first conversation is a phone screen, that hiring manager has to call and at least have a phone screen in 48 hours and then set up an in-person interview from there. But the recruiter is able to communicate that up front in the conversations just to help the candidate experience along, so they're not sitting out there wondering, how long is this going to take? Are they really going to call me? And setting kind of clear expectations on what our full hiring process looks like from application to hire.
That's fantastic, and I appreciate kind of walking it through too and then sharing some details. And one thing I'd plug there too for Dollar General, especially when you think of what Kim and Leslie just shared, is that focus on candidate experience and when they talk about the assessment piece. So obviously we work in the assessment business, and that's kind of what we're alluding back to. And it's really important that obviously you're leveraging the assessment to identify those quality folks. But where Dollar General is concerned in terms of the volume that's coming through, if they can't or don't finish the assessment, we're never going to know if they were a good candidate, right? So one of the things we've worked and we're continuing to work with Dollar General and CarMax is to really look at the assessment part of their application and shorten it while still maintaining that validity and that top science to give you quality candidates. So one thing for Dollar General we recently did is really take the assessment length, especially when you look at their retail sales associates, down to about an average of 5 to 6 minutes to complete, and really seeing some results in terms of folks not dropping off. Our drop-off rates are very, very low, which we're pretty excited about. So we rolled that out just a couple months ago, and I think it's gotten some good traction thus far. But as Kim mentioned, we're really going to continue to kind of improve that piece of it for them and do what we can at the Outmatch side to kind of ensure that the assessment part is part of that overall candidate experience and it's positive and engaging. One of the things I'll actually kick over to CarMax and put Caitlin kind of back on the spot is Caitlin and CarMax do a really good job of kind of that interview piece too, right? So they speak on the front end from a sourcing, grabbing them in with their brand, but then they have a great job of kind of a structured interview process and leveraging a lot of tools and strategies through that interview to the hire. We're also working with them today to really focus again on how do you kind of streamline that to get the most out of it while you're still leveraging the assessments and kind of using that information to guide the hiring decision as well. So Caitlin, do you mind maybe elaborating a little bit more on kind of some of those strategies you put in place through the entire process and what that looks like for CarMax?
Definitely. One of the things that we realized is that, the hiring process is not only for us to learn information about the candidate, but for the candidate to learn something about us. So at each point in the process, we hope that there's a give and take there. So throughout our hiring processes, we hope that our assessments, interviews, on-site role plays are all instructive for the candidate, provide a little bit of a realistic job review and a sense of what they're getting into when they step into a role at CarMax. So, for example, we have some customization in our assessments that provide, while we're trying to get a sense of someone's sales ability, because our selling practices are a little different, we're not a traditional dealership, we're not a traditional retailer, let's put them in the situations that our folks see every day to make sure they're comfortable with that, to make sure everything is a good fit, and they can picture themselves in our stores. And then on the on-site experience, the same thing happens. So we give them scenarios to walk through with our managers and really get a sense of, can I succeed in the role, while also giving us the benefit of actually seeing someone perform tasks that we need them to perform on the job.
Awesome. Awesome. You guys can probably see on the call too that both brands, as well as a couple other clients I kind of referenced, Brinker especially is another one of my clients too, similar to a CarMax and a Dollar General, where really kind of connecting with the candidate and providing that unique experience is important. So they really kind of connect their customer experience with the candidate, similar to the two folks that are on the call and their companies. And I would say even when I was in recruiting, this kind of idea of candidate experience was so important, and looking at it from your selection and your sourcing strategy all the way through your interview strategies, and making or adding some uniqueness like you heard just from CarMax or Dollar General. Some of the other things that some of my clients have done too is kind of during that interview process, touring locations with the candidate there by their side, showcasing maybe some of the product and offering discounts on their products that are available to them. And just overall, how do you tell that story when that candidate's one-on-one with you to kind of highlight the uniqueness? In my past life, that kind of telling that company story for us, I came from Five Below, the retail stores. It was more about kind of highlighting the American dream and how entrepreneurial and open environment it was. So really overall, you can see that kind of from a candidate experience, it's really making it true to who you are as an organization, but also making sure you're putting that front and center and identifying that quality early on. And even if the candidate doesn't get the job, they're walking away still with a positive view of your brand and your organization, and potentially still being a customer for years to come. So we kind of continue talking through too, and we talked a little bit about creating this top-notch candidate experience. One of the things I would love, if you don't mind, in terms of I'm sorry, I didn't follow the right one. In terms of your hiring strategy and tools that you have in place to identify the right fit for those roles, as well as your organizational culture. So we've talked about those strategies along the selection process, but maybe telling us a little bit more about kind of what exactly you have in place to identify that right fit. So we talked about a structured interview process, but if you could give us a little bit more detail, maybe Caitlin, I'll ask you, in terms of what does that interview process look like? What things are kind of addressed in that interview process where you're really identifying the right fit for the role?
Absolutely. The vast majority of our positions follow a very similar talent selection process. We have an upfront integrated assessment for just about all of our roles that gives us a sense of someone's baseline personality, and competencies. And at the very core, we think this person can successfully complete the job. We have a phone interview where we often follow up on the findings of that assessment to make sure that those findings are accurate for that candidate and where they are in their job, and that they've maybe, had they not scored so well, they've learned some compensating behaviors to that indicate they may actually be successful in the role. Then we bring them on site to the store where there's another interview, as well as that in-person role play or exercise that really puts someone in the shoes of an associate in that role and lets us see how they would perform. Then at the end, we typically have kind of a higher level interview, but also it's more of a selling discussion. We talk about CarMax. The higher level manager at that point shares a bit of their story and how they got where they are. And that's really our primary framework for every single position that we hire for. With that number of inputs, we see a variety of different kinds of skills displayed, and we think we get as much as we can of that whole person as you possibly can in a very kind of often uncomfortable and odd situation that is hiring someone that you've never met before.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, Leslie or Kim, do you mind maybe asking or giving us a little bit more context around, I know you mentioned a lot about how your store managers have ownership and accountability around, the interviewing, the hiring practices. Are there specific tools or items or things that those hiring managers at the stores leverage today that really help them identify that right fit when they're meeting the candidate on site?
Yeah, so we actually did a lot of revamping of some of our pieces of the process over this last year, making sure, so as an organization, we really focused on our customer first this year. So we went through and redid our job descriptions on the hourly through store manager, district manager, all the way up on the operations side, to make sure that our job descriptions, when you go to our website, reflect that the customer first initiative really is something we're passionate about. And then we created interview guides for the store managers to use when they're interviewing candidates, again, that ties back to our customer first initiative. So are the candidates that they're talking to, do they align with what we've created our assessment to focus on, what we've created our job descriptions to focus on? And then organizationally and culturally, are we targeting and looking and trying to attract the same type of person to our buildings?
That's fantastic. So really both companies have been focused on kind of streamlining your process and making sure it's consistent from start to finish, it sounds like.
Correct. And I would just say that similar for our distribution centers as well. So we've streamlined that process, but more around productivity and retention, whereas retail we focus specifically mostly on customer first at that front line. So we're aligning based on the needs of our businesses.
That's awesome. Hey, Kim, do you mind also just adding maybe just a little bit more context, too, around how when you're identifying that right fit on the front end, what that looks like, too, in terms of connecting it with development and promotability on the back end?
Right. So
Absolutely.
we use sorry, go ahead, Caitlin.
Oh, no, that's okay. I misheard. Go ahead, Kim.
I don't know, Kellyanne, did you want?
No, Kim, you can go. We'll give Caitlin the second try.
Okay. Sounds good. So we're always looking at how we can take our buckets personality assessment from our pre-hire assessments and then help grow into a development plan once they become an actual employee. So as an example of how we've used that is with our store manager to district manager population, where we have them take the assessment, and then based on the buckets where they have opportunity areas, we actually have development activities that tie to that to help their leadership skills develop. So we're really trying to make a whole process so that we can utilize all the data. It goes back to that big data and making sure we have those analytics to help infuse every strategy that we're doing within the company to help the candidate or internal employee become the best them they can be.
Awesome. And hey, Caitlin, do you mind adding context too? Because I know CarMax does a great job of not only leveraging the assessment, but other pieces of data once they're on board to kind of identify who might be a high potential for other roles and other leadership training you offer down the road.
Yes, absolutely. We have a very similar sounding program to what Dollar General is doing. So we take all of the information we learn on the front end, not only on, if we're bringing in someone externally, internal folks go through the same process, the interviews, the role plays, the assessments. So we have the same kind of buckets of information about our folks, whether internal, external, and then we provide them as much of that information as we can in a kind of developmental and supportive way to help them grow and determine the next step in their careers. So we try to infuse the development process with as much of that information that we learn up front as we can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I think we've, at least I myself have learned even more than what I already had known when we first started our conversation in terms of kind of identifying your high volume hiring, identifying the right fit, and connecting kind of your process from start to finish, and then connecting it also with the full talent life cycle. Moving forward too, I don't know, Nikki or Charles, if you wanted to kind of just give a high level recap, or if we want to move forward to the opening up with questions, but I'll turn it back over to you folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for time's sake, we'll go ahead and move towards the question portion of this webinar. And I appreciate all the great responses that we got today. We do have a number of questions, and I'm just going to start off with the first one. We had Rachel chime in with a question back when we were talking about the candidate experience. And her first question is, can your assessment be taken on mobile? And the short answer to that is yes, our assessments can be taken on mobile. But I'd like to open that up to our guests from Dollar General and CarMax to see kind of how you guys leverage those mobile assessments.
So I'll chime in there just for a second. Maybe Kim or Leslie, do you guys maybe speak to how you're leveraging it too, and also how you've improved your mobile experience as well over the last year and a half or so?
Yeah, it goes all the way back to even our whole recruiting process and utilizing ISIMs, but then having our actual assessment become mobile friendly. And I think our biggest win on that, like I mentioned earlier, is more than half of our candidates are coming through coming through mobile, which is a significant increase. And that overall increase has led to a more than 11% increase in our entire candidate flow throughout the entire year. And when we say entire candidate flow, we're talking about 1.6 million candidates plus per year. So it's really helped, and it's one of the things that has even helped, Kellyanne, to your point before, the drop-off rates and things like that. We've noticed significant decreases in our drop-off rates from assessments, and attribute some of that to the mobile application and the ease of being able to click right through it and finish it on their phone.
And just to add on to that, this is Nikki. At Outmatch, that is something we're certainly tracking too as we're thinking about our assessment and our platform. And so we find about 40% of hourly level candidates are taking our assessment through a mobile device. And, according to a recent study by Indeed, they actually found about 65% of job seekers overall use their mobile devices. So certainly something that is top of mind for us, and as we're thinking about the tools and solutions that we provide, that candidate experience is always top of mind.
Yeah, and so moving on to our next question, we've got another one here from Rachel, and her question is, what are the metrics that help you show ROI impact of the assessment? How do you know the assessment is working? And so I'll open that one up to Kellyanne to kind of talk through a little bit and how she tracks the ROI and the impact of the assessment, and then we can open that up to our guests.
Sure. So actually I could speak to both Caitlin at CarMax and Kim too. So Caitlin and the CarMax team and our research team recently went through and kind of pulled together some ROI analysis and study looking at kind of the assessment data and their current kind of incumbents. So those folks that have been hired over a period of time, specifically within their sales department. So we kind of look at the assessment, we look at some objective metrics really CarMax did a lot of the heavy lifting in some of this as well, in terms of looking at some of the correlations between the assessment, what it's measuring, and where those folks are today in terms of their performance and our turnover. So those are some of the kind of the backgrounds that we do. And we did find, and I'll actually let Caitlin talk to this a little bit, we did find with that sales-specific ROI study that the assessment was actually helping to predict them pretty well in terms of overall leveraging that and identifying top performers who are staying with the company a lot longer, and really helps CarMax focus on those top performers to get them even further within the organization. But Caitlin, is there any more you'd probably speak to the recent ROI study for the sales?
Yeah, so basically my guidance for anyone kind of looking for ROI through an assessment is it's really the quality of your own metrics that help provide a lot of that, because we're able to know exactly how our sales consultants are performing based on their performance on the assessment, because we so heavily track sales performance on a couple different metrics and a couple different measures. But with the assessment, we were able to kind of take the metrics that we gathered in-house, combine them with what we knew about the candidates when they were coming in, and then totally kind of rejigger how we were not only scoring the assessment, but then how we were dealing with candidates once they come into our applicant tracking system. Because of the metrics and the additional information we had, we were able to, over time, make better decisions and better prioritize those folks that we knew were more likely to be high performers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we're actually embarking in the process right now, working with Dollar General to do something similar too. And what we're looking for is, again, to kind of tell the story of the value of the assessment, but also as the back end, once we understand the data, the current value and how it's performing, what we're going to look to do too is take that information, make recommendations, and ultimately feed it back into the assessment, meaning we'll make updates to the assessment that can increase the predictability over time. So it's one thing to keep in mind is whenever we're looking to do ROI studies or working with our clients, that we want to have the assessment in place for a certain period of time, collect those objective metrics that you deem important. Like Caitlin said, it depends on kind of what you collect in terms of what we can present. But also use that information to improve the deliverable, so the assessment over time, and then continue to do that so it's a living and breathing document that you're getting the most out of and you're seeing a return on your investment.
Awesome. Okay, so we have one more question here coming in from Sam, and it goes back to our sourcing portion of the webinar, and his question is, where do you find the most qualified candidates? Where do you find that they come from? Where do the most qualified candidates come from? So I know we mentioned a few different sources, but could we narrow it down to maybe one or two of those where the most qualified people come through?
Yeah, so I'll speak. This is Leslie. I think it depends a little bit on the level of position that you're looking for. So what we found from an actual amount of active candidates that are online looking for jobs that we can target, we have the greatest population on Indeed, and we advertise jobs on Indeed, but we also use their resume database option where our recruiters are going in and sourcing resumes and then reaching out directly to those folks that have resumes on the website and starting the dialogue from there. So they're not necessarily looking for jobs at Dollar General. They're just looking for positions and have resumes posted. So that's probably from a numbers perspective where we have the most active applicants. And then our other is for senior manager level positions. It really is LinkedIn and through the connections there. And we have a couple of the recruiter seats through LinkedIn that allow us to reach out to people we aren't really connected with and have a larger stretch from a territory perspective that we use for our director, senior director, executive level positions.
I would agree with those two. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I would agree with Indeed been the most valuable. I think also from the CarMax perspective, over 30% of our hires are referred. So that's been a very fruitful source for us.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the answers there. And I just want to back up to Rachel's question on ROI of assessments. We do have a number of tools that we use here at Outmatch as well. And Rachel, we can reach out to you after the webinar and help you through some of those tools that we have. And if anybody else wants to kind of get an idea of their ROI, you can do that with going through our demo and signing up for that. You can just go to our website and sign up for a demo, and you can actually schedule a time right on our calendars. So go ahead and check that out. But that brings us to the end of our webinar. So I just want to say, thank you to our awesome presenters. A lot of really good material came out today. And so, just join us on our next webinar. It's going to be the future of HR: how predictive analytics is changing the game in 2018. And that's presented by Greg Moran, our CEO, on January 24th, 2018 at the same time. So 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central. So again, I just want to say thank you, and we will see you next month.
Thanks, everybody.